Legislative update. I'm Jim Baumgart, your host, along with Nanette Bullabosh as co-host, and we're here to provide you with the special guest, Kyle Whelton, who's running for state senate, and we have the honor of having him with us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's great. It's so wonderful to have you. I am sitting in the room with a former state senator. You served one term, several terms in the state assembly.
Yes, I was there forever.
And we have someone who is a current school board member who might be our next state senator, which would be really awesome. And I just want to say, I'm not going to pretend to be unbiased. We're all Democrats here.
That's right.
And I was able to go to your Sheboygan rollout, as they call it, in March at the quarry, and that room was packed.
Overflowing.
It was overflowing, standing room only crowd, and the excitement in the room was really terrific. And I thought, wow, this could do it. We're a relatively conservative district, at least that's the image. Could this be the year we have the blue wave, and could you really make it? How's it going to happen?
I think so. And so before I decided to jump into this, I looked at the electoral performance and wondered, is this possible, right? Is this a district that would be more championing the message, or is this one that we can win? And when you look at it, Martha Lanning was a phenomenal candidate.
Yeah, she was.
She outperformed Mary Burke in this district by 7 points, but still lost by 20 points to Devin Lenahue. And you wonder, why did that happen? When you look at it, the vote drop-off between Mitt Romney and Scott Walker is just about 2,500. But the vote drop-off between Barack Obama and Mary Burke is 15,700, right? So in 2014, only 65% of Democrats who voted in 2012 voted in 2014, but 95% of Republicans voted from 2012 to 2014.
So they just have a better turnout.
Far better turnout. And so one of the questions that comes up is, why is this year different? Well, I think the latest Marquette poll gives us a pretty good example of why. There's a 10-point enthusiasm gap in the Democrats' favor about voting this November, right? So one of the things that we typically see anytime that there is a first-term president is that their party tends to take a hit in the midterms. But this year has been particularly strong, stronger than we've normally seen. To the point,
people are scared.
Yes.
These tweets and stuff might be cute for many, but they understand that we have an economy that has to perform, and we have workers that have to work, and we have wars that are going on, and we don't want somebody with a tweet in the morning that might be different in the afternoon.
But could the blue wave hit the Wisconsin legislature?
That's the question.
I think so. I think Patty Shockner provides a good example of this. So Patty Shockner won, I think it was January 21st or 22nd when that special election happened. It was just after the one-year anniversary of President Trump's inauguration.
Explain to the viewers which election was.
And she's in legislative districts, or Senate District 10. That's in western Wisconsin. And that was Sheila Harsdorf's district. So Sheila Harsdorf was tapped for an administrative appointment by Governor Walker, vacated that seat. And that's a seat that was held by Republicans for decades. And it was gerrymandered to be a solidly red district. Donald Trump carried that district like he carried SD9 by 17 points. But Patty Shockner won that in the middle of January in a cold snap in a special election where pretty much everything is typically going against Democrats by 10 points. And it wasn't just progressives that showed up who were angry to vote. There was persuasion that we saw in the exit polls that there were moderate Republicans who were changing their vote because they saw a community-oriented leader and they wanted a change in their state legislator. And so I think that at this time we have a real opportunity throughout the state of Wisconsin to win districts that, based on the maps previously, we thought were unwinnable.
So as you, Kyle Whelton, go around Senate District 9 talking to voters, some who don't even align with either party, they just want a good candidate, what are you telling them? What message resonates with most people?
Right. I think the real piece that comes down to is community-oriented problem solving, right? I think everybody agrees that there's a lot of households in trouble when it comes to family supporting wages. Everybody agrees that we need to have strong public schools, right? I don't think that that's in contention. And many people are worried about the rising cost of healthcare in Wisconsin. But the thing that has frustrated them so much is that they sent a legislator to Madison, right? Single party control with the governor. And all we've seen is inter-party fighting and really a lack of progress. And I think a great example of one way that our communities have been hit and the legislator has abdicated their duty is the dark store bill. So Some of you may not be aware of this.
It's a complicated story. If you could simplify it, terrific.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
currently in Wisconsin, there's a number of retailers like Walmart, Menards, and some others that are suing local municipalities to lower their property tax assessments. They're saying that their property tax should be assessed as if the store were dark, no lights on, no revenue coming in.
Even though they're not.
Correct. And I don't get that logic, but it's held up in the courts. And so what happens is the city of Sheboygan, town of Sheboygan, village of Kohler, you name it, has to fight these battles. They're losing attorney fees, and then they lose the revenue.
And have to shift that to the
Property
public.
taxpayers.
Oh, yeah.
So your properties, our property taxes
We
all go up as a result of
Because
this.
these large, wealthy retail outlets, national retail outlets, don't want to pay their fair taxes.
Correct. Even after we've already put infrastructure in to
Yeah,
support these groups.
tons of it.
So Dewey Strobel, an individual with whom I have very little common ground, introduced a bill to fix this. He introduced a bill in this past session, and there was bipartisan support. Scott Fitzgerald refused to call the vote in the Senate because he didn't have a majority of Republicans who were willing to vote for the bill. Now, that's dysfunction, and that is a broken system.
And that shows special interest power for Wisconsin manufacturers and other special interest groups
I see.
that sort of control the purse strings, that control the legislators, that make these legislators.
So municipal leaders wanted this change.
Sure.
Yes.
The whole state
But the
wanted it.
leadership of the party said, no, we can't, sorry, we're not going there, we're too afraid. We're going
Exactly.
to lose funding or
You would have had
donors.
Dewey Strobel and a majority of Democrats voting yes on the same bill, and it didn't get called.
Yeah.
And now we have, again, that money doesn't just disappear. It has to come from somewhere because we have roads we have to pay for and schools we
Yeah.
have to fund. And so now we're the ones footing the bill for these tax breaks. That's what it is. It's a tax break for these large retail outlets and other companies that are suing for dark store assessments.
I see, okay.
And one of the things Sheboygan County did, because everybody, I'm on the county board, everybody was complaining about a year or so ago, roads and potholes are terrible, fix them. And so we finally said, we're not getting the money from the state as we should. We're going to add our 0.5% sales tax, which we never did. So we charged taxpayers, and we gave them all of that money back to villages and towns and cities so they could fix up the roads. Well, that money should have been coming from the state level.
That's right.
And not out of the pockets of local property owners.
Right.
So Kyle Whelton is elected into the state senate. It's wild, we're all thrilled. What are you going to do your first couple of days in office? What's number one on your agenda?
I think number one has to be redistricting reform, right? I think one of the
that's
things
corrupt. That's what's taking place.
we've seen for far too long, and this is a perfect example of what's happening here in Wisconsin, but it's happened in other states, right? In Maryland, Rhode Island, Illinois, where one party gets control during reapportionment.
And both sides, Republican
That's
and
right.
Democrat.
It's happened with Republicans, it's happened with Democrats.
Got to stop.
Where they draw the lines so that over the next 10 years, it's pretty much impossible for them to lose control. And that's not free and fair elections, right?
So how would you make it fair?
I think what we have to do is get it out of the hands of the legislature. I want to see a nonpartisan commission drawing the lines, recommending to the legislature, and then passing it. It's the first time in Wisconsin's history that we had single-party control of the legislature and the governorship during reapportionment was 2011, and we paid the price for it.
Yeah, we did.
And there was talk about fixing the process before 2010, and the Democrats were in control at the time, and they said, no, because we'll be up and we'll be in control, and so we can draw the maps. Well, that is a foolish, foolhardy, stupid decision, and nobody should ever put party before community like that, and it's time to change it.
And actually, before that, there was always either a governorship or assembly or senate was when the 10-year period came up for redistricting, there was always a check and balance on
Correct.
the others. But this last time, it was not. And
Yep.
Republicans took it to the nth control. And the next election, I think 250,000 more Democrats voted than Republicans, and the Democrats lost seats in the assembly
Yes.
because of redistricting.
In 2012,
Yeah.
that happened.
It was
where-
crazy.
One more seat.
Yeah.
Right.
you know,
More
'cause-
people voted for Democrats.
In 2010, we saw a pendulum swing, right? We saw about 60-40 vote share for Republicans in the Assembly, and they got just about 59, 60 seats in the legislature, and Democrats got 39, 40 seats, right? That makes sense. We have some electoral harmony that's going there. Then in 2012, we have the pendulum swing the other way. We've got about 60% of votes or 55% of votes there for Democrats and a opposite vote for Republicans. But Republicans kept the same number of seats in the Assembly that they had back in 2010. And then you have to scratch your head and say, well, how does that happen? It's because they've changed the way the lines are drawn.
And actually, I think the Republicans gained a few seats.
Yeah.
I think it would be very helpful to have someone with school board experience in the legislature representing us. You know, I was among those thousands who protested Act 10. I don't know if we can ever go back and recapture what we lost, but what can you do to help schools and public education in the state?
And these are our kids.
These are
That's
our
right.
kids, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that we can do is fix the school funding formula. Wisconsin school funding formula isn't bad, but the distribution is struggling. And part of that comes back to a measure that was put in place back in 1994 known as revenue caps, where you're capped at the amount that you can levy per student.
Right.
And that was based on a 3-year average of spending at the time. It was kind of an arbitrary number. But
Well, it was to give taxpayers a break. I mean, I understand the intent.
Absolutely. But we've been locked into these numbers for almost 24 years now, right? Or for 18 years, excuse me. No, 24 years. So that is something we have to re-examine because the districts that are hit the hardest are our rural communities, right? And we did just get some easement for that. We saw that they increased that cap just a little bit for these rural schools, but they're still struggling to pay for things like social workers, school resource officers, transportation. And that's desperately needed in the heart of rural communities. I think the other thing that we can do is start shifting the focus away from testing. Throughout the state of Wisconsin, we're still heavily focused on these test numbers, and what we know is that student walks into school and had, parents fought the night before, or they had tough breakfast or things like that. They're not going to score well on those tests. It's not really a good measure of the student's achievement, but now we're spending our time teaching to the test, and it's not helping our students. The other thing is that we have to make sure that we're creating an environment where teachers want to work and thrive. And so this is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night as a school board member. The enrollment in UW-Madison's College of Education, which is the #1 source of educators, public educators throughout the state of Wisconsin, is down 50% from 2011. And 1 in 5 public school teachers in Wisconsin leaves the profession within their first 5 years. So we're down 50% from our #1 feeder source. We've got 1 in 5 leaving the profession within their first 5 years. We're struggling to retain talent.
And they're leaving the state.
That's right. They're leaving the state. They're going other places. And part of that is because morale is down, wages are down, benefits are down. And it's not that teachers made a lot of money to start with, but now they're making even less. And there's a number of educators that say, I wouldn't tell a young person to go into education in Wisconsin, and that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. So we're almost out of time again.
We are close.
What do you want to make sure people know? How can they help? If they really like what you have to hear, how can they get involved?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways that folks can get involved. The first is to sign up to volunteer, and you can do that through talking with neighbors, going door to door, making phone calls, or hosting a house party, inviting me in your home to meet some friends. There's a number of ways to get involved. Another thing is you can put a sign in your lawn. We'll be getting yard signs here pretty soon. If you're feeling generous, you can make a contribution to the campaign. That way we can afford yard signs and mailers and other pieces. But
we do have to end, so these individuals that have been watching, if you like what you've seen, please contact the candidate.
WheltonForSenate.com?
KyleWhelton.com.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for coming. Until next time, this has been Legislative Update.